What if I told you that one of the deadliest wars in the history of the world also fostered one of the most touching displays of humanity? Today, I'm going to be talking to you about the Christmas Truce of 1914, in which soldiers of opposing sides of the war laid down their arms and celebrated Christmas together. As a 2014 Telegraph.com article points out, the Christmas Truce is significant precisely because it happened only once. In the history of a world filled with war, it stands as a stark anomaly. No other event like this had happened in the modern era, and no other event like this has happened since. America did not join World War I until 1917, about a year before the war ended in 1918. Since there were no Americans that participated in the truce, it's a story that most Americans don't know. The events of World War I are generally overshadowed by the events of World War II, but the Christmas Truce is a story that is truly worth remembering. My three main points today will discuss the background events leading up to the truce itself, and the aftermath and significance of the event. To begin, let me give you some background information on the First World War and the events leading up to the truce. The First World War, known at the time as the Great War, broke out in July of 1914. It was unlike any war the world had seen previously due to its massive scale and the number of countries involved. According to that same Telegraph.com article, the Great War was supposed to have been over by Christmas. Instead of the war being over in a matter of months, however, it would be 4 long years until it ended. According to a 2009 article on History.com, Pope Benedict XV called for a temporary ceasefire for the war in December of 1914. The Pope had taken office in September and urged the warring countries to put the fighting on hold for the celebration of Christmas. While the idea was wholeheartedly rejected on any official level, it was clear that the idea had crept into the minds of the men actually doing the fighting. So now that I've given you some background information on the war, let's talk about the truce itself. There are unofficial accounts of events like this happening all across the Western Front that day. This is the Western Front. It was the area that traditionally saw the most conflict because it sat right in between the two major powers of France and Germany. As you can see here, there's Germany up there and France, and this would be the front, and all along this line would be trenches dug for fighting. A lot of the fighting in the First World War could be described as stagnant and futile. There would be men and trenches that wouldn't move for months, and a lot of land that was just taken was simply lost again. A Time.com article written in 2014 points out that some 2/3 of troops, around 100,000 people, are believed to have participated in this legendary truce. Many of the accounts detail this event beginning with English and French soldiers hearing German soldiers start to sing songs like Stille Nacht or Silent Night on Christmas Eve. In some places, English and French soldiers joined in singing in their native tongues, and some even played instruments if they had them. On Christmas morning, English and French soldiers awoke to panic when German soldiers started appearing in no man's land and appeared to be walking toward the Allied trench. Only these soldiers were unarmed and called out that they did not want to fight that day. Many soldiers thought this was a trick, but eventually they realized that the Germans' intentions were genuine. What ensued was a truly magical event. Soldiers greeted each other, not as enemies, but as fellow human beings. Each side came out of their trench and ventured into no man's land to fraternize with the enemy. I have some pictures of no man's land for you. This is what used to be a forest that was destroyed by the warfare and turned into a no man's land. And this is what a more traditional no man's land would look like: mud, stagnant water, debris, and corpses. No man's land was the area in between the opposing trenches that nobody dared venture into because it was guaranteed death. Sometimes they stretched for miles, yet some only measured a couple hundred feet, close enough to hear the enemy. As these soldiers ventured into no man's land to greet each other, this area of death became an area of joy. The soldiers traded chocolates, beer, and food. They told stories, and as that 2014 Telegraph.com article details, played a game of soccer. This game of soccer is probably the most well-known part of the story and has become synonymous with the event, appearing in artistic renditions, songs, and even commercials. So now that I've told you about the events leading up to the truce and about the truce itself, I want to talk to you about the aftermath and significance of the event. Now, with as much joy as this event brought to the men participating in it, it also brought with it a great deal of sadness. The following morning, the soldiers understood that they had to return to their respective trenches and resume the war. They faced the prospect of killing a man they had just shared an extraordinary moment with. As I mentioned earlier, this event was truly special and one of a kind. It has never happened again, officially or unofficially. So many of the reports of this event were unofficial and were rumors because soldiers and especially officers feared being reprimanded for their roles in it. In subsequent wars, officers and governments found more effective ways of cracking down on fraternization with the enemy, all but assuring that an event like this would never happen again. This was truly an event belonging to the common soldier actually fighting on the ground, not the politicians and generals calling the shots. The 100-year anniversary of the truce was in 2014, and as a result, the event was honored with depictions in the media and even a statue built in England honoring the famous soccer game. There's a picture of the statue being unveiled in England by Prince William. So now, I hope that you've learned more about the events leading up to the Christmas truce, the truce itself, and the significance of the event. As I've mentioned before, this truce really was an anomaly. It's such a distinct and unique moment in history that it deserves to be remembered by everybody. According to that 2014 Time.com article, while there were occasional moments of peace throughout the rest of World War I, they never again came on the scale of the Christmas truce in 1914. So now, I hope the next time that you're celebrating Christmas, you remember the men who participated in this magical but bittersweet event all those years ago. Thank you.